did I teach you?
You are unconventional. No, you're a number one.
I can't hear you.
You are the Duke of New York. You're a number one.
Peace, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Excellent. Everything is cool. Everybody can see the screen, right? Excellent. I hope everybody's been well, inshallah. Times is moving at breakneck speed, you know. Praise everybody that's been able to, keep their head on a swivel and not get caught up in the nonstop propaganda that goes with, life on Earth, in or around Earth. Anybody have any questions about anything before we get started? A lot of stuff popping off. A lot of people mad. A lot of people upset about stuff that I ain't never heard black people be upset on. I heard black people the other day, so-called black people the other day, talking about how, the stock market is crashing. We ain't gonna. I'm like, what stock market? When you ever heard these Negroes talk about anything with stocks and all of that? Outside of watching, Wall Street, the movie, and niggas don't fuck with stocks. Niggas deal with Forex and crypto. Like, you know what I mean? And the people that do have been doing it, you know what I mean, when it wasn't cool. But for some reason, everybody's caught up in the sudden rise and fall of whatever it is that they're dealing with. So, you gotta let them squander off their information. They squander off their information and all of this useless blowhardness, like your boy Hakeem Jeffries the other day doing a filibuster for 25 hours straight. 25 hours? You sat there and lied for word. You sat there and lied for 24 hours straight, bro. Like crazy. Selena said, "What a loser." Exactly, yo. It's like, come on, man. And it's like they don't know. It's like they're like Hollywood right now. They're just stuck. They just nothing is working. Nothing that they want to do is working. He is a loser.
You ain't make no teeth.
No one.
You ain't brush your teeth.
He looked crazy at the end of it. He was looking wild.
You're not alive.
Yeah, you're wilding. And he just did all of that, and he's constantly. These dudes are constantly playing themselves. Like somebody made a meme and said, these Democrats ain't shit because they'll speak to Al Sharpton and all of the rest of these niggas over 14,000 times, but they won't sit down and talk to Dr. Claude Anderson once. And they right. You know what I'm saying? That's the problem. Everybody's muted, right? Trying to make sure. I have everybody muted, but just in case on your end, just please make sure everybody's good. Yeah, so this is all part of the show. You know what I'm saying? And they're not going to deal with somebody that's going to bring a real solution to the problem. They're not equipped for that. Because remember, this is the party that started off of murder and country usurpation and stuff. So, and they could say what they want about the so-called Republican, but again, initially, the original people who were still left to run the government, those original so-called Republicans were referred to as the radical Republicans because they were the ones who were making the hardcore legislation against the enslavement, the perpetual enslavement of the prisoners of war who had been relabeled as Negro, black, and colored. Negro, if they were mixed, like imported, like half or Tonkin, like your mother's from here and then your mother's an imported African. Then you got the blacks who were basically the ones who actually had the land and actually owned a lot of the shit, but then they were put under the so-called French black codes, which then meant that they had to basically stay as live-in hostages, live-in butlers, maids, slaves, hostages, i.e., indentured servants, right? And then you had the black, the Negro, and then you had the coloreds. These were the ones who still had connections to their ancestral lands, their ancestral governments. You know what I'm saying? These are like the governments of the Choctaw and the Chickasaw and those types of Moors. You know what I'm saying? But each one were basically all remnants of the initial expulsion that started at 1492. You know what I'm saying? Or as we know, affectionately call it 492. You know? So with this tariff thing, like we talked about in the last class, like we already let you know, or we've already shown and proved that that's this whole system of law that they are now trying to embark on to try to turn the United States away from the democracy and closer to a republican form of government from which it was founded. They have to use Moorish law, right, or Moorish customary law to enact any of it, because that was the initial backing that they had to get their legitimacy on the world stage to begin with. You see what I'm saying? Because we, as the disenfranchised global Moors who had now lost the stronghold, we were still filthy rich and all of that, but we didn't have access to the markets that were now being taken over by the Vandals and the Visigoths and these types of things. You know what I'm saying? So we became more insular in our connection to one another, and then thus began to become more feudal and more thing. And then so once the European, the so-called black nobility European, Western Asian bloodlines of nobles started coming in and trying to escape the oppression that they had set up where they was at, and then want to come over here and interbreed with us, and then eventually try to turn us towards their form of law while they benefit from our benevolence in terms of land, culture, and country. You see what I'm saying? And so once that became the norm, the back and forth, situation, that became the basis of how we interacted with one another. And thus the original purpose of what we were striving to do after the fall, of course, became muddled, because now niggas is making money. You have a whole disenfranchised. You have two or three. Think about that. The first four generations after the whole situation went down was the one that they really went in on. So Granada Falls, we still somewhat in power because niggas still got babies with a lot of these light skinned mulatto so-called heiresses and things, right? But then the way that the satanic rituals was going with them was that they would initiate the expungement in the first generation, but then they would keep it going and culminate it up to what they believe would be the fourth generation. By the fourth generation, now they got to wipe out as many people that used to know how it was in the first generation after the fall. They got to wipe them out and then reinstitute a new form of government to put those remnants under, and then give them the false history, and then put them under the false timeline through the intergravicissimus, which is what we spoke about, in which they jumped the timeline from October 4th to February 14th within 10 days. And each one of those 10 days, they ascribe 1,000 years to that day. Then within that process, add 1,000 years to their calendar, subtract 1,000 years from ours, and then this is where they put everybody on a so-called 38, 31-day calendar, right? With all of the leftover days corresponding to the original 13 months that they had altered in order to create this superficial timeline to get us all to forget who we were in. And then in this new timeline, we now become the so-called slaves, meaning we literally take their place, even though the Slovakians and them types of people who were named that were under the jurisdiction of those melanated lords from the ancient kingdoms of the Pugachev and the Georgians and these types of Tartarans and all of these black people that we see in all of the Russian iconography. So because Russia didn't submit, or the Russo lands didn't submit to the wiping out of everything, they just went and altered their version. They just altered the Tartarian stuff enough where they could still maintain a certain degree of control over it. You know what I'm saying? But the Russos, they were just as guilty as erasing shit as everybody else. You know what I'm saying? and Russo means the red, because they were again, these Moors, these corrupted Moors under the Scarlet Banner, which eventually got switched when they all got ousted, and then formed that 300 and some odd years of them becoming what they call the Barbary Pirate era, the Age of Adventure. Where you get all of these Moors who have been broken, who have been, raped, who have been, tortured and all of that. And now they wage a commercial war, you see what I'm saying, as privateers on behalf sometimes of the same nations that put them in this situation. You see what I'm saying? It's a all around messed up scenario. And we're still paying for it because we never really put it into the context of what happened. We're always dealing with the aftermath of shit. You know what I mean? So before we go further even in that, I just wanted to give honors to one of the founders of so-called hip hop. You know what I mean? When it was that per se, um, even though he was involved with your boy, but as one of the founders, he was one of the original. If I can go back and think from when I was a child, one of the original people, or one of the few original men that I remember really always dressing, in native garb. I'm speaking of nobody else other than Powwow from the Soul Sonic Force. He just passed. You know what I mean? But again, this is what I'm saying. Like, we was being bombarded with imagery of ourselves. You know what I mean? Just outside of context. And what Soul Sonic Force, or what Planet Rock did specifically, was give the actual abstraction of what we were doing, rhyming, breaking, graffitiing, you know what I'm saying? All of that record gave it all cohesion. If you really think about it, it brought it all into sync. You know what I mean? And that's why that record is still, if you play it to this day or whatever, it's still, you know what I mean, bangs, because that was one of the first times that we originally gelled as a culture. This is before, I mean, the labels, was the white people wasn't really into it then, so it was still fresh, it was still real, and we were all contributing to this. You see what I'm saying? At the time, because there was no real movement per se other than that. So once Planet Rock hit, and then we started seeing all of these different elements, all these different versions, right? Because back then niggas used to dress in costumes and shit, but it was still authentic in the context that people were still moving and creating something that's technically didn't even exist even then. But when this came out, everybody knew this is what hip hop is, right? And we evolved it from that. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without Moors like Brother Powwow. You know what I mean? But if we don't preserve the legacy of brothers like Powwow and stuff, they're going to wind up doing shit to even clown him, because there is no, all of these hip hop record producers and these types of niggas, you will wonder, how come they never set up a hip hop museum? Why would T.I. create a crack museum, an altar to the crack era that destroyed millions of our people in that time period, instead of putting money up to create our own so-called hip hop rock of fame, or hip hop hall of fame, or whatever the fuck? Why we always got to be inducted into the rock hall of fame? Even though we invented that too, but you know what I'm saying? Because these niggas don't have no control, or never really allowed themselves to have control. And when they did, like right now, at this time, the biggest record label at the time of Powwow was run by an original woman. She had all of the acts in hip hop on one label, on her shit. Imagine if she had been around the right person or the right people, how much control we could have had over the art form. But it was also the time of pimps and hustlers and heroin dealers. You see what I'm saying? So we lucky we got it this far. He said he probably got a government grant to set up the crack museum. You right. Right? And to add insult to injury, this is what I'm saying. If we don't find a way to actually consolidate and control the history of our movement, of our people, and our American, because hip hop is an American art form that was created by melanated American people. Period. You can add on everybody else you want, but I was there, nigga. You know what I mean? And it wasn't about being Puerto Rican. It wasn't about being all of these other things, Jamaican, all that shit. Because at the time I was coming up, niggas wasn't Jamaicans, Rastas and shit. They wasn't even rocking with hip hop like that. That shit was like blasphemy to them. So again, don't talk to us if you wasn't really there. But like I said, if we don't do it, they're gonna do shit like this. You know what I mean? Wait, let me pull it up. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? They're gonna do shit just like that. See how they do your boy? It's horrible. Wait, let me pull it up again. Why would they do that? You think they don't know? And it's the AI. This is why you can't trust the AI. You know what I'm saying? So this is what happens when you don't control your history. They basically just swap you out and let the computer sort it out. This is my point. So it was also a rhetorical question what I was saying about why they don't do that. The reason why these people not going to do that is because they can't do that. Part of the deal was them being able to do it for themselves because it most likely, in all instances, was a psychological operation to begin with, right? That took advantage of the mystical shit that was going on within us at the time that this was happening. And certain intelligence agencies who use remote viewers, who use zodiac intuitionists and precognition specialists, they're the ones that try to do that. So they want to try to get ahead of the curve before it happens, so that way they can find a way to manipulate it. Okay, how many people ever heard of the painter Jackson Pollock? Y'all ever heard of him? Y'all ever seen a Pollock painting? What did it look like to you? Look like a bunch of just splattered lines all on the damn canvas, right? Look like a bunch of crazy shit, right? This is what they was saying with him. Well, and everybody would look at it and be like, well, damn, how is it that this dude is getting all of this money off of these squiggly lines and this shit that has nothing to do with it? Doesn't, is it art? Like, it's just glops of paint and squiggly lines spatter all over the damn canvas, and we're supposed to look at this as that. Well, why? Well, because he was set up by the CIA. I don't know if y'all know this. The whole art scene was set up for money laundering. As well as, remember, Pollock was out during the Cold War. And during the Cold War, art was going through a different stage of revisionism, right? Because now after the war, they remember all of the art was stolen by the Nazis. So they didn't have no real new shit, no old impressionist masters to deal with, because they still got to hunt all of that stuff down, right? So what they start doing is the Russians start a whole new artist impressionist movement themselves. I forget what it was called, but some Russian type shit, in which they were doing like different variations of cubism and this type of stuff, right? So they was getting some burn off of that, right? So naturally, United States, the corporation, they got to be able to have the best artists in the world. So what these niggas said, well, what we're going to do, we're going to find the worst artists and we're going to promote them the best. And as we promote them the best, we can use them to basically drive the Soviets crazy. So what will happen is the Soviets will see the bullshit that we are promoting to see, and then making it seem like it's the best thing in the world. And then what will happen is the Soviet artists will see this and they will start to dumb down their shit to be able to match this crap that we know is not even real art. You understand what I'm saying to you? This is modern entertainment. Yes, this is what I'm saying. Look, during the Cold War, the CIA indirectly supported. How do you indirectly support something? You create a fake agency. You get an agent to create a fake agency, or you go to some art student fresh out of the college that you don't already jammed up their mind with feminism, communism, socialism, all this bullshit. Then you get them, right? You Bolshevik these niggas, and then you get them to go and create an institution or an NGO or a gallery, right? Get that money. And then once they get that money, this is now where they're going to funnel the money to. But then they have certain stipulations in the grant, right? It has to go to certain people, right? What does that sound like to you? That's DEI, right? Right? That's affirmative action, right? See what I'm saying? It's an intelligence tool. It was never about giving people equal rights. Only people believe that is stupid people. Why would the people who deprive you of your rights want to come around and then help you secure your rights? Does that make sense? Look, expressionism, see, it don't even exist. They invented this shit. Expressionism, you understand, motherfuckers got degrees. You know how many artists, when I was doing gallery work, would droll on about their degrees in expressionism and art impressionism and all this bullshit? Getting drunk off this wine and cheese and shit. And I'm sitting here looking at these niggas like, you don't even know how to paint. you don't even paint. Look, as a counterpoint to what was perceived as rigid and formulaic style of the Soviet-sponsored art. See? Meaning niggas who actually had a technique and talent. These Russian painters were good. They were better than the American painters at the time. Despite the communism, despite the statehood, despite all of the gulag, the KGB and all this shit, these niggas was creating ill art. So they say, you know what? So they secretly financed and promoted artists like who? Jackson Pollock, a hack. William Kooning, a hack. Mark Rothko, a hack. These niggas is hacks. Go and look up these people's art that I'm telling you. Don't just take what I'm saying. Because, you know, white people, you understand, white people love these niggas. I would go to the me and Selena, we would take the babies to the Guggenheim, and I would go to the Rothenberg show. I will go to the Pollock show. I'll be looking at this shit and be like, this is a scam. So I'm showing you where the scam come from. So it started with this, right? Through the organizations, see, like the Congress for the Cultural Freedom, see, they always using these names. Congress, make you think it's federal. Cultural, make you think that it's about the people, right? Freedom, make you think it's about expression of your thoughts and shit. No. And by supporting exhibitions of their work. Pollock was a paranoid schizophrenic. This nigga was so caught up in his mental chatter, most likely because they was probably siphoning LSD to this nigga without him knowing, right, for years, because he was known to have these sporadic outbreaks, and he was just going crazy because they was probably fucking with him to create this bullshit so they could market it like it was real art, just so that way they could deconstruct the real artists, both in Russia and in the United States, who may actually be doing good shit. Now they got to figure out how to splatter paint. Now they got to figure out how to not paint properly in order to get some sort of attention. See? So they turned art into gimmick. And then gimmick started to mirror the art. Right, but this is how the corporations takes over art. This is why all your Marvel movies suck. This is a psychological operation. I'm showing you how the PSYOP work. The organizations, right? Which were what? The Museum of Modern Art, the MoMA. How many times you done seen movies in front of MoMA? And When Harry Met Sally, Breakfast at Tiffany's, all of these movies. Why you think they always in front of that shit? Because they marketing that, because it's a front. It's a front for them to launder money and put fake art to make the real people who actually do real good art to want to copy this bullshit. Case in point, Sexy Red. See? You understand? And her CIA name, allegedly, is Agent Bow Wow. Or Bow Bow. I said, oh, that's not true. I'm showing you, nigga. I'm showing you. This is why. You know how many female rappers rap better than these women? If they even that. Because half of them is probably dudes. Right? But let's say they are. You know how many people, you know somebody on your block right now that rhyme better and sing better than everybody on the radio right now. But they'll never be famous because they're not assets. Right? The CIA involvement, while kept secret for some time, has been revealed and is now widely discussed as a significant factor, in the rise of abstract expressionism. See? Another thing that don't exist. Abstract expressionism and its influence on the art world. You see what I'm saying? They destroyed art. They took it over, made you think that what it was art, and then pumped niggas in your face that would market it as if it was. Oh, look at Pollock. He's the tortured artist. No, they was lacing his fucking water with LSD every day. And this nigga was bugging out. And then his wife, who was sent to him probably as the implant, urged him to do this type of bullshit. Why? Because she was a goddamn communist. See what I'm saying? All of them. Anybody they showing you most likely in the mainstream is one of them. Not because I say so. Not because I'm showing you. I'm showing this is how they control you. Look, peep this. Not control you, y'all, because y'all smart. But you know what I'm saying? These people. What is the Freemasonic, what is the thing they all jerk off to be able to have power? What do they say? Order out of what? Order out of what? It's all a scam. They've been scamming us since Britannica fell. We're just the first generation to embrace it like this. Thank you. Order out of chaos, right? Right. Now watch this. What was the operation called? What was the operation called, y'all? Operation Chaos. Oh. That's a coincidence. Right? Look, psyops, propaganda, and gangster rap. What you call it? Kwame. Big up to him. He the only one. They had to get Kwame. I went to school with him. Him and Al and everybody used to be up at Bertram rapping after we would cut and all of that, or had to go to summer school or whatever. We always be at Bertram listening to all that shit, right? So I came up at a time where everybody that was going to schools in Manhattan, all these niggas wound up becoming rappers, right? So Havoc and Prodigy, big up to them. Sticky, all these people, right? So Kwame was like the first one to really, really pop, right? And then when he was also producing all his own shit. So he was keeping, like he understood the game early. So they realized they need to get him out of here. So he was producing and doing shit for everybody. So by the time Biggie came out with the polka dot shit, that was a rap, right? But I bring all that up to say that that was the time when people would hone their actual skills. That's why you actually had to be good, right? So they needed to bring in stuff to turn us against our own music. You understand? So he was one of the only people that talked about the meeting that went down, and all these niggas was at with a so-called small hat Mossad Mafia niggas was in there and basically telling these niggas, y'all gonna have to dumb down y'all songs. We're gonna get into this gangster rap. Y'all niggas is gonna make nigga songs and all this other type of shit. We're moving away from all of this conscious shit because the conscious shit was running shit. You understand? At one point, hip hop, it was full of as much as they want to try to paint it gay. You wasn't like that openly, my nigga. Because you would get punched in the mouth. People would get rushed. record companies was getting rushed. Niggas was running up in record companies getting their money. They was not playing with these niggas. They was not playing with these white people. They was running that Ice Cube shit. That's nothing. I remember when niggas was running up to the source with hammers, looking for writers. Niggas was hungry. They was not trying to have they bad reviews. You understand? I remember when there was almost shootouts at the label where they would have to get the police to get the record label heads out of the building. They had to get all of that testosterone out of here. So they had that meeting, and at the meeting, they denounced what they was going to do because they also announced that they had invested into the private prison thing. And the private prison thing, this was all shepherded by CIA, but was funded by DOD, Department of Defense, who, by the way, also funds the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts, if you didn't know. That's how deep this shit is, B. And the Weebelows. They fund DOD, Department of Defense, fund all this shit. Okay? So that's when they came up with the psyops and shit. And after that, that's when you stop hearing Tribe. That's when they got Primo hooked on crack, allegedly. That's when they got rid of Guru. That's when they got rid of all of the New York shit and they started focusing it to the South. Why? Because they could bring more of the gay shit through them. Now, again, I'm not saying that Southern people are all gay because they're against that, but you know there's a lot of that repression shit. And a lot of the Southern niggas was on that pimp shit. And a lot of that pimp shit is homo shit. Facts. All of that growing your nail, the nail long shit, that's the same shit Sammy Davis Jr. used to do. That's what the Satanists do. All of that like dehumanization of female shit, that's all comes from these psychological programs that was initiated by a lot of these broken types of privatized Moors, right? And so-called white privateers that absorb that shit into their families. Yes. And they started bringing that shit in. But again, it was too many hard niggas in the South. The South niggas wasn't going for that. So what did they do? They started getting rid of the ones that was too masculine. Got rid of Soldier Slim. Gone. See what I'm saying? And then after he go, who start to rise up after that? Birdman and them, right? The same dude talking about kissing niggas in the mouth, right? You see what I'm saying? They replace you with who they can control, who they've already compromised. That's how the game go. Look, Operation Chaos in the 1960s. That was during the whole civil rights movement, right? 1960s, the CIA under Operation Chaos spied on American citizens, particularly those involved in what? The peace movement, directly violating its charter. So it needed to be shut down, which is what Kennedy was going to do. And you see what happened with that. The Kennedy hit was a culmination of the Mossad. And again, you could read the document yourself. The Mossad, the CIA, the Italian mafia under what was it, Giancana, and the military industrial complex, Lockheed and Raytheon and these niggas. They're the ones that got rid of all of that. So right here, they should have been shut down. CIA has used executive orders like Executive Order 12333 to collect intelligence on U.S. citizens, particularly those suspected of involvement in foreign intelligence terrorism. See, suspected is not a crime. That's why the FISA shit is failed. The CIA has engaged in clandestine activities, often using deception. They sought to showcase. This is also why they use the art shit. They sought to showcase the dynamicism of American freedom of American art in contrast of the perceived artistic conformity of the Soviet Union, which was the opposite of what was going on with the art. The government might have been oppressive, and there was government art propaganda art. But the actual artists of Russia at the time was doing phenomenal shit. Meanwhile, over here in the United States, most of the artists over here was on drugs because they was all CIA agents. Like I told you, the whole 60s rock movement, all of this is under Operation Chaos. Radicalized these niggas to the point that they started to burn up schools, that the white people created a pseudo-insurgency called the Weatherman Underground, of which Obama, so-called Barry's, one of his godmother and godfather was involved with that shit. You want to see a movie about that? Check the movie. Oh, shit. It was with Robert Redford. I forget the name of it. But a couple of them. So all of this. And remember, all intelligence stuff that the CIA learned, they learned from MI6. Okay? Everything that they learned from MI6. MI6 shared that data with the Mossad. And now what the United States is doing is it's sending its military and police to the Mossad instead of MI6 and everything to be radicalized. Yes, through the Tavistock Institute. That's right. Who created the Beatles? Who created Bowie? Who created all of these niggas? These niggas didn't even play instruments. The U.S. government officials are now defining their action in Iraq, right? Boom, boom, boom. One aspect of the Iraq infrastructure, what does it say? It begins with us working together, but it's hard work. One aspect of the Iraqi infrastructure on which the Garner expected to work together with Iraqis was establishing a free press. See? Propaganda. Boom. Yeah, so they set this whole thing up, the gangster rap shit, and then they veered rap into the other direction to help with the prison costs. That they were also making money hand over fist because this was also during the crack era, remember? And what was happening was we made crack whack. We made drugs whack, right? Through hip hop. Hip hop did that. Remember Self-Destruction. Remember We All in the Same Gang. Remember Slow Down by Brand Nubian. Say what you want about Lord Jamal, peace of the God. He ain't never make no record about selling drugs to no black man like Fat Joe and the rest of these niggas did. He ain't never make no record about killing and shooting black men and selling them crack and shit. He ain't never do that. He ain't never do that. Fat Joe can't say that though. Because all these niggas is agents. All these niggas been on the tape for years. For years. This has been since they came on the scene, and the ones they couldn't control, they got up out of here. Big L up out of here. Who rose up after that? Jay-Z. See? See? Who was Jay-Z under? LL Cool J. And they put these niggas through the gay rituals to get them to be the furthest away from their manhood and their truest self, where they always got to act like they something that they not. Because they become the brides to these niggas. So when you hear that the record exec, like the rumor was that Kevin Liles was Trey Songz's sugar daddy, allegedly, right? This is the story that was out there, whatever. That's not what's going on. That's his bride. You don't understand the game. It's not his girl. That's not his man. That's his little apprentice / guide. You understand? Into the foray of that. And I guess once he outdid his situation, he had to go. But no, that's his bride. And this is how these niggas work their apprenticeship. It's a form of pedestry. This is how old Roman men was groomed into shit by another man. Women was only seen for procreation. Just the type of shit these niggas is on. Whether you believe it or not, whether I believe it or not, this is what's going on, bro. Because they are involved with intelligence agencies. And if you're involved with the intelligence agency, you have to participate in the ritual. You have to. That's the only way they can trust you. Why do you think the FBI and the CIA will let their informants actually go and kill people? That's how you know who the informant is. Whoever is the wildest in the street, popping guns, trying to talk about how you're going to shoot this one, that's the police. He's the cop. He's the cop because he got impunity. He can do what he want, so long as he keep an informant on y'all. We saw that in the movie The Departed. Remember The Departed? Everybody was informing on everybody else. This is how it works. Your attention is the prize. That's what's most important, bro. Your attention. So, because what you attend to is what you tend to deal with. And they need you to constantly deal with their version of reality. And their version of reality is evil. So that makes you believe that reality is evil. See? So it make you what? Not want to fuck with people. Make you not want to be out there with people. Because you can't. Why? Because people are crazy. Why? Because they've been inundated by Nazis since the end of World War II, who were put into government and intelligence psychological programming to be able to turn the country into what it is now. And they're too pussy to come out and say that that's what it is. It's their fault, not yours, not the American people, not those of us that wasn't participating in none of this shit. And so what is their goal? What is then the result? How are we going to fix it? Well, we're just going to kill everybody with products. You see? They arguing over oranges and apples, B. So again, Masons, not evil. Your grandfather that used to go to law, whatever, most likely he don't know, but it doesn't change the fact that he's a part or she is a part of an organization that, regardless to what you think your little lodge is cut off from, you're not. Because you're following the similar rituals from somebody. If you didn't write the rituals yourself, or if you don't have a verified copy, a lineage of these rituals from their inception to you getting them, and you can verify that every word in every aspect of the ritual has not changed from then to now, you still can't even do that because you don't know what was invoked during that position or who was involved in that position to begin with, because you wasn't there. So you still taking the word of another man. You still holding the secrets of something that you don't even really understand. But because you looking at your eyes, you believe that that's what it is. Because your peoples is not doing that. Yeah, but you don't know where your dudes is really going. You don't know who in your joint is a part of something else and is spying on you. I'm showing you that that's how it go. Every Muslim community that got a desk in the United States got a CIA desk in there. Every mosque in the U.S. Let me, mashallah. Let me be less direct. Almost every mosque in the U.S. is monitored and has a CIA operative or desk attached to or assigned to that mosque. They also have FBI files on each members of the mosque that most likely are provided to them by the imam. Didn't we just read the story about how USID was funding Al-Qaeda? How USID was funding the Taliban? How USID was funding the Muslim Brotherhood? Didn't we just go through all of this? That they're also funding Boko Haram? These are all Islamic fundamentalist terrorist group that's being funneled money by the socialists, right? Who have grouped up with the nihilists, who have grouped up with the Satanists, who have grouped up with the leftists, who have grouped up with the gay mafia, who have grouped up all under the small hat regime. Look, MS-13 links to occult rituals and Santa murder Venezuela because that's part of their ritual. In order for you to get in, you have to kill someone. And not only kill them, you got to do it in the most horrible way. That's how you know this is CIA. I'm showing you the fingerprint of the agency. Look, you feel that the devil is helping you? MS-13 satanic history. Where can we trace it to? Trace it back to the Talmud, right? That was under the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees, which were the Freemason, devil-worshipping, pagan cult orchestrators of the day, who were also melanated and passed this shit on to the Ashkenazim goals, who's using it against all of us today. Look, this is to you. They believe that everybody on earth is their slave, and that we need to be ground up and fed to one another. Even the best of Goyim should all be killed. All children of Goyim are animals. Gentiles, Goyals, are not humans; they are beasts. A Jew may violate and not marry a non-Jew girl, right? Gentle Goy girls are in a state of nidah, filth from birth. So their whole thing, and again, this is not all Jewish people, because not all Jewish people even accept the Talmud. Why? Because it was the anathema that they created when they were transfigurating themselves when they were in captivity in Babylon, and they started to work with the Babylonian priests and the old Babylonian priests, who were now trying to reveal and resuscitate Nagash. And they created a union. And then after they were set free, they took the Talmud with them and used that as a means to set up things like the Sanhedrin, things like like the Pharisees and all of that shit. So that way they would act as intermediary house niggas between them and the so-called nation of Israel, or the descendants of Israel, who after the fall of the temple or the fall of the kingdom were forbidden to have their own kingdoms because of their own transgressions to their own God, according to their own story. And so these people decided that they were going to create an alternative to the Torah that they then could implement their own bullshit through to reinvigorate the old deities, the old washed away deities that were now disincorporated, but could now feed on the energetic flesh of people who venerated them. You understand? That's why in the Bible and all of that, it say that no, you are of your father, the father of lies. Those who say they are Jews and who are not. But they're not going to get into that, right? Because now they're in a position where that's not favorable. People don't like what's happening with the Zionist movement and all this other type. They don't like it anymore. And they don't want to pay for it, especially now that they're finding out that they got a choice. What? You know how many people, how many average American citizens and global citizens were killed by this state? It don't matter though. It don't matter. Because they feel, again, I just showed you why. Because in the Talmud it says they have the right to do this to you. See, it's a scam. It's a human trafficking scam that has been going on since the fall of Grenada, B. That's why they hated the Moors, because we shut it down. And the parts that we couldn't shut down, we took over. And then started to create systems to move the people out of it. That's why they'll call the Moorish Empire, the Arab Empire, or the Islamic Empire to this day, because they don't want you to have your own. Because that was the last empire on file that was kicking their ass all over the planet. All over the planet. But they fell from within. And when an empire falls from within, it's the hardest to reestablish. It probably will never reestablish itself like that again. You can reestablish yourself if you're invaded. That's why China don't want to invade. I don't give a damn how many weapons you think they got. They've been lying about their numbers for the past 30 years, nigga. Their birth rate is 0. Their population is off. They got 75% of men. They got to make laws to stop women from suiciding themselves. Look it up. They got these things called suicide nets that they put outside of buildings because so many people were throwing themselves to their death. Talk to me about the Chinese men and the China. Oh, China gonna do China. Y'all niggas, man. Y'all niggas, yo. Y'all niggas believe everybody got power but you. Look, secret CIA file says staffers committed sex crimes involving children because that's how you get initiated. That's the 3rd degree. When someone is screaming at you, what do they used to call that? They said they giving you the 3rd degree, right? Didn't they used to say that? When somebody was just going in on you, you'd be like, oh, this nigga giving me the 3rd. Why the 3rd degree? Now, why not the 4th degree? You ever notice that? Boom. Has the government legalized secret defense spending? Yes. Yes. While noisy Supreme Court fight captivated America last fall, the obscure federal accounting body quietly approved a system of justified money moving, laundering. That's a crime. That's laundering. They're legally laundering your money. And then they're trying to get niggas like Jasmine Crockett and the rest of these brain dead niggas to come out and get you to not be upset that they've been spending all of this money that they would lock you up for, that they would ruin your life for. You're supposed to just be okay with it and still vote Democrat. The German experiment that placed foster children with pedophiles. You know what experiment? You know where that experiment came from? That experiment came from the Weimar or the Weimar Republic. That was the Sodom and Gomorrah of the mid-20th century, mid-19th century. That's where all of the transgender surgeries, that's where all of the debauchery, the porno houses, the opiate, all of that shit was happening there. And you know who ran it? Some of the same people that's running that country right now. That, exactly. They who shall not be named. You know who it is. Just like OnlyFans, Pornhub, Grindr, Tinder, all of that shit. You know who owns all of that? You know who owns all of that? You know that 76% of the wealth of the so-called United States is all going to people of a certain religious affiliation. You said the small hat people. Yes. Did you hear what I just said? 76%. You know why that number is significant? Because they also say that 76% of all women divorce their husbands. But here's the ill shit. 77% of divorces, right? 77 lesbian relationships have a 77 percentile divorce rate. So women are getting divorced from men at 76%, according to these so-called polls, right? But when women marry women, they're divorcing themselves a percentile more. But in the percentile of the divorce of the men, they're only They're divorcing at 76%, right? But of that, the longest relationships that they have is usually in heterosexual relationships. So they've just taken control of the mind, specifically of the woman. And I say that because the female is the one that they're running the plays through. You understand? The black man was the chattel. He's the one who is the fuel. He's the one that, but now they got the women. The women are gaining. They putting up numbers. They about to surpass men in prison. They're about to surpass them. Y'all about to be there. And what's happening is men are becoming more conservative. Isn't that crazy? The men are actually going, black men are actually going to jail less now. Isn't that crazy? You see how the tides is flipping? What's the difference? Remember, the women are the ones that had all the education. The women were the ones that they were giving all of the things to. The women were the ones that were seen to be or were trying to be made as a separate species from their men and their children. Why? Because it's a trap. It was always a trap. It was a way to manipulate the overall structure of the family to create a permanent state, a permanent class dependent upon the state. And there were no men to stop them. Remember, communism, feminism creates the divide in the split. From the feminism comes the openly liberated woman, and then from there they're able to then expand it now to the homosexual, from the homosexual to the trans to the beast. This is how the Weimar Republic was able to do what it did, and they took that because remember, when Hitler came in, he shut it all down. So where did all of those people go? You know where they went? They went to the German-friendly societies that were run, again, by the OSS, CIA over here, brought them over here, and what did they do? They put them in colleges, and they had children, and then their children were given this whole doctrine and shit, where they live in this life in secret. Go look at this movie called The Apt Pupil with Ian McClellan. Go look at that movie, The Apt Pupil, A-P-T Pupil. This is when they used to make real movies. Because after this point, this is when they started to really put out that all of the Nazis was here in America now. And they did. This is where all of the problems came from, y'all. I'm showing you. This is where it happened. Because this is how they celebrate this is how they celebrate their God. This is them worshiping. What I'm showing you, this is them worshiping their God. And these are the people who are put in control over you and are trying to make laws over you. Look, one popular chat topic was a male to female transgender surgery, which involves surgically removing the penis and turning it into an artificial vagina. These male intelligence agencies love the feeling of penetration and of peeing in their pseudo vaginas. Do you see this? These are NSA agents, because when the DEI thing came in through ESG, everybody talking about DEI, but DEI came in through ESG. Because remember, we was the only ones in the community talking about this shit when these niggas was still trying to act like Biden was dope. When they was all getting poisoned with the coronavirus and shit, we was the ones not only dissing that, but we was the ones talking about how this ESG shit, this is also the reason why this is happening. Well, they used that concept, the DEI ESG concept, to be able to promote active pedophiles to positions of power in government openly now. Go look up who was the head, Rachel Levine, who was the head of the health department in the United States, bro. Freak. Look at the head who they put as the head of the Department of Energy. It was a freak transvestite dude who used to dress up in puppy kink and was arrested multiple times for stealing women's underwear out of their suitcases in the airport. This is Jasmine Crockett. This is Kamala Harris. This is Stacey Abrams. This is all you Democrat dames, aka Eastern Stars. This is your constituents. Because they went through the same rituals you had to go through to get that job. Yes. The Pentagon found workers found to have downloaded child pornography. Why? So the audit, all of this is coming up. They got the files on everybody. That's why I really don't believe nothing until you actively see niggas get arrested. So these are the niggas now at the NSA. These freaks, these demons, these are the niggas that get to sit there and read your chats and read your texts and shit. Because he's a white male, but he identifies as a female, so that makes him a minority. And so he qualifies, and he also happens to be gay. And then he also happens to have a dissociative disorder, so he's disabled. You see? So for every disablement, you get more money. You see the scam? And what does this do? It does the same thing the art program does, is it makes you have to dummy down, right? Yourself to get the job, which means you can't be smart to work, which means if you have a job, and especially if it's something that's vital to humanity or people, you're putting people in danger. I don't give a damn what color the nigga is. The nigga could be chartreuse. I don't care. I want the nigga to be qualified, nigga, when I'm on the flight. It's not that as soon as I see somebody of a different minority or whatever, I'm not one of these people who's going to be like, oh, this DA. No, that's not it either. But it is to say that they instituted this to create that type of prejudice. It's manufactured. See? Operation Chaos. You see? And no matter what you want to do, it's not going to work. They're going to keep trying to muddle it and make it even more that. Because you got a bunch of dumb niggas out here trying to support this shit. So, it don't matter who it is. The one who's benefiting the most right now. Since this tariff shit hit, America been making $20 billion a day. That means we're fastly approaching the time in which the actual debt, the interest on the debt is going to get paid down, y'all. You know what that means? That means that within another 2 years, the actual debt itself, if he don't just cancel it outright, will be done. When that happened, that's when a reset. That's when they're going to have to do it. Because then the gold got to be backed by everything. Right? So, like I said, now you got niggas, all of these niggas are stock experts now. Now they want to tell you what stocks to get and how this is going to destroy whatever. You want a stock tip? Invest in GameStop. GameStop is one of the main reasons why the country is even still functioning right now. For all of the people holding the GameStop stock and not selling. It's impeding the money laundering. To the point these niggas made a movie about it. Look into that. That's real. All of it is laundered. Everything is based on blackmail. Everybody is trafficking and having sex with children. That's what you have to accept. I'm talking about everybody in the mainstream people that is trying to get us to be onto them. Yeah, they letting the people, great. But they telling us shit that we've been telling our people for over 20 years. How many times we've been telling people everything is in China is manufactured, is copied. China don't create nothing new. Everything China have, China stole from somebody else. People, this is what I'm saying. This is why history falls on deaf ears to certain people, B. Everything China got. Do you understand that the reason why China is in the position it's in today is because the United States paid for them to do that. Do you understand that Mao Zedong, when he came to power by the end of his reign, this sick, degenerate, transvestite Jesuit murdered over 53 to 55 million of his own people? You know what happens when you kill 53 million of your own people? You know what happens? You know what you're left with? You're left with a nation of children. Isn't that interesting? And those children are now what? Orphans, right? And now who got to raise those orphans? The state, right? Sound familiar? Guess who paid Mao and them, financed all this shit to happen? Rothschilds and them. And then, remember, at this time, the United States is the juggernaut in the world. We are the manufacturing capital of the world. Anything you want to get made, you can make in America and become rich doing it. It was like that at one point. As much as they want to beat you in the head and tell you niggas ain't have no money, do you know how many billionaires, original billionaires that was loaded with money, your color, before slavery, during slavery, after slavery, during Jim Crow, after Jim Crow? Do you understand? No, you don't. You don't. Because we only go by what Al Sharpton and the rest of these pieces of shit tell us with history. So we don't know nothing. And our parents didn't teach us this shit. They didn't care about none of this shit. So we just go along doing what they do. Matter of fact, some of our parents was out here taking loans out in our names when we was children. Remember that? How come nobody talking about that? Some of our credit is still messed up from that to this day. Your mother taking out loans so she could get her hair done. Your father taking out loans so he could go to the track. You understand? So let's not make China God, because it's not. It's not. And it's not in the shape that you think it's in. All of that shit is propaganda. I'm telling you, B. It's all propaganda. They can have 1 million and all that. Do you know how many Chinese citizens is in America right now? So they're going to come over here and kill their own people too, right? That's what they're going to do? They're going to come and kill their own people. Or their own people going what? Rise up? Right? This was the plan. Remember, they had the sleeper cells. Remember, I told y'all a couple months ago, they had the sleeper cells all over here with running through the Chinese police stations. That Biden and these niggas allowed them to open up in the hoods and all of that. Remember that? Well, guess what? All that shit shut down. All them niggas is getting kicked out. Yeah, because I Show Speed, again, is a pawn. He's a puppet. He's been broken. He's always doing some gay antic shit. He's signal. That's called I Show Speed is what is referred to in the old days as a signifying monkey. Now I'm not calling him monkey in the derogatory sense as if melanated people or black people or I Show Speed is a monkey. I'm talking about the aspect of the old so-called African proverb of the signifying monkey, which actually is an American thing. So he's just there to, again, make China look cool to the youth. That's why they gave y'all TikTok. Remember, TikTok owned by China. Do you see the games they be running on you? No, y'all don't, because y'all stay on TikTok. That's why I'm not on that shit. You want to add years to your life? Get off TikTok, B. But you can't do it. They can't do it. Get off Instagram. Limit your social media to no more than 3 exchanges if you're going to do that. Nigga, I'm about to regress it to a flip phone because they got it now where if you go to the airport, they got the thing where they just going to read everything in your phone. So if you're going to travel, especially internationally, they may institute it domestically too, depending on their random search shit. But if they do that, you better not have nothing whack on your phone. So again, you might as well just start invest in this flip phone now. Put some calls on it and use that shit. So that way, like I said, when you travel, that's all that's going to be. It's just going to be a bunch of numbers. So that's some free game. But on your screen, real quick, again, India is originally from the Americas, right? American Indians are the indigenous Aborigines. These Aborigines are so-called Moors. Why? Because the oldest bones and all of that of the original man in America, right, goes back over 385,000 years. That goes back to the time of the Younger Dryas. Actually, no, that may even be before that. That's actually even before that. The patrilineal delineation between father and son, unbroken. So you see why we had to get the fathers out the house, y'all? See? Thanks, Mom. Anyway, India, right? Indus, right? Hence the region of the Indus, provide of the Sindhi. Now, the Sindhi were the Moors that ruled over India. Get the book Salamagundi by the magnificent Prince Uriel Bey. And he got a whole section of it on there. Hence, the region of the Indus provided, gradually extended by the Persians, see, and the Greeks to all the countries east of the Indus, right? Because remember, the Greeks are the Creeks, right? The Persians, the original Persians, right, are the ancient so-called Thracians and Scythians and shit, right? The India appears to date from the 16th century. Formerly applied to America or some parts of it. See the Indies or West Indies. Sebastian Munster. The Perch as pilgrimage. 451. The name India is now applied to all far distant countries, not in the extreme limits of Asia alone, but even the whole of America. Islam. So when they say that you are Indian, they are relating you to the Afro-Asiatic peoples, not only of the Indus, but of the Far East, as well as America, to show you the extent of your empire. Islam? Okay. The status of inhabitants of the territory acquired by the discovery, purchase, the conquest, according to the usage of the United States. From the early period in American history, two principal theories entertaining existed upon. These theories conflicted and were influenced by the opposing interpretations, with the national and the states' rights schools be placed upon the powers of Congress under the constitutional grants. The states' rights schools at first denied the United States, see, because the United States is not America. The United States is the corporation that usurped America and is now occupying its government. Islam had the power under the Constitution to acquire new territory. The national school insisted that the power existed and was necessarily inherent in the government as an attribute of sovereignty. Notwithstanding the doubt and denial of the extreme state rights schools, Louisiana, Florida were acquired by purchase, Texas by annexation, and an extensive territory was acquired with treaty with Mexico. See that? So right there, this is how we were brought into, our separate empires were brought into union. So when they talk about when they talk about the original union or the union of the republic, this is what they're talking about. And each one had to be brought in. Louisiana was acquired by purchase. From who? Napoleon. Why? Because he was at war with Toussaint and the rest of them for control of the Franconian Empire that had now had jurisdiction here due to its relationship to the Inca through the marriage of Charles II. Was it Charles II or Charles V? Whichever one it was, right? So that's how it was purchased by Thomas Jefferson, the mulatto, right? The mulatto psychopath who enslaved his own children to go along with the ritual, right? Then that's Louisiana. Then Florida was acquired by purchase. From who? They say the Seminole, but the Seminole never sold. because the original Seminole wound up. The original Seminole with John Horse in them wound up having a dualistic state. They had land that was always here for them here. Thank you, Danielle. And they also moved to Mexico and had land out there and fought with the so-called Santa Anna with the army and shit. Because Santa Anna was a Moorish day, right? And then Texas by annexation. How did the annexation of Texas go? And who did they annex Texas from? We know. I know y'all know, but it's also rhetorical. I just be bringing shit up sometimes just so that way we can all be on the same place. Okay, let's go to the annexation of Texas. Oh, here we are. Right? Tecuas, right? Tehuti or Thoth, right? Which is the 5-pointed. We already know that, right? The annexation of Texas. Let's read that. So this is how they acquired it. The stupendous desert between the Nueces and the Bravos, the Rio Grande River, the rivers and natural boundaries between the Anglo-Saxons, right? Who are the European Moors and they white slaves, and the Mauritanian races. There ends the valley of the West. There Mexico begins. Thence beyond the Bravo begin the Moorish people and their Indian associates, to whom Mexico properly belongs. And these were all Muslims. Why? Because Muslims, we know, is an old Delaware word, right? Because the Alamo was one of the older Tartarian mosques that was still here, that they wound up burying up into the top. When you go do the ground penetrating radar to the Alamo, it keep going down into the ground, like everything else that they built on top of. And thus they had to break it down in those 3 parts to match these 3 parts. The Empire of Morocco is much the largest of the Barbary states, comprising the ancient Mauritania, which is where? We just read where ancient Mauritania is. In Texas. So they told them about over here, right? But Mauritania over there didn't become Mauritania until the 70s. And the modern kingdoms of Morocco proper, that's over here. In Fez and other divisions. That's 2. 3. Then the country of Morocco is remarkable for its fertility, producing grain, olives, fruits in abundance. So as we can see here, all of the East Coast names, right? The Algonquin, the Iroquois, the Muskogee, right? These are the language groups. You understand? These are the language groups of the people, not necessarily the people themselves. You get it? We've been fighting them for as long as we have been here. This is another excerpt. Look. Santa Anna was but one breed of such. The Spanish America for the last 25 years has been the teeming mother soldier of fortune, who by the sword or the musket ball have risen to supreme power, and by the sword and the musket ball have fallen from it. That breed is not extinct. And the very last intelligence from Peru tells us one of the fallen of the Yoruba and the Mina and the Guerrero. So the Yoruba people, the Mina people, the Guerrero people, these are all Moors, right? And Santa Anna have fallen in Mexico. The same soil which produced them is yet fertile to produce others, meaning that there's still a Moorish contingent down there that's not going nowhere. They produced themselves, see, with nothing but a change of name and of the man. Your war, sir, is to be a war of races. The Anglo-Saxon American pitted against the Moorish, Spanish, Mexican American. A war between the northern and the southern halves of North America, from the Paramacomadi to Panama. Are you prepared for such a war? You see? You see? I told you, it's all the same war against the Moors. They just call it different shit to get you to believe that they talk about different people. But we just saw here that the name will change, the man will change, but the whole shit is staying the same. This is in the congressional record, y'all. You are the ancient Mauritanians. Circle 7 Quran said we are descendants of the ancient Moroccans born here in America. The ancient Moroccans are the ancient Mauritanians. The pretense ancient defining and showing the difference between us and the ones in the kingdom now. The ones in the kingdom is under France and the king. We not. We are the remnants that they left behind, that they sold out to be able to have what they have. And to give them their credit, they really did. I don't really think they had a choice. I don't even really think they had a choice in it, bro. Cause the French was in their ass for longer than people would even imagine. And they still got their greedy paws and shit up in there, kind of. By keeping the king and keeping certain aspects of the country decadent. You know, people don't know Morocco's at war with the northern half of itself right now. They trying to get more control of the southwestern portion of the desert. And they're allowing themselves to be capitulated to whoever gonna give them the right to do that. Here we go. So yeah, so this is what I'm saying, Moors. This is why they are problems with us as Moors, because we're the ones that all of this shit gotta go back to. Because we're the only ones that can chart how it went down, because we're not going with their version of the story. We're rewriting the story for ourselves, which is our God-given right to do. The Mormons created a whole history for themselves that don't even exist. That's based on our history. Everybody else could do that, but the minute we start, oh, well, that's not true. The Moors was, nigga, shut up, bro. Matter of fact, keep talking. I don't care what you say about it, because you ain't got no nationality, no way. You can't say that you nothing else other than what they told you is. So how are you able to tell me anything? This is where you got to start going. You know what I mean? Like, we're grown now. It's to the point where you know what I mean? What do we say? Okay, and I put this here to show you again the sons of Canaan, right? Who is the son of Ham, right? This is what the Phoenicians. So when they talk about the Phoenicians who gave birth to the Carthaginians, who are also connected to the Algonquins, these are all the same people. Carthaginians, all the same people. Just different variations of the time. But they were all basically connected via the stock because, again, they were the seafarers and the ones that decided that they wasn't going to stay with the traditional group of everybody. You know what I'm saying? This is from a book from, the Northwestern Territory. So we went through all phases of that, right? The charter and the extent of power of Congress over territories have been subject of repeated and excited discussion in and out of Congress. The National School insisted that under the Constitution, Congress has absolute and despotic power over the territories, that whatever they have the power to do, they have the right to do, if in their judgment it would concede the general welfare. See? So all they got to do is cite general welfare. Why? Because they're functioning under the Occupation Act. Okay? They're functioning as an occupying territory. All right? me pull this up. So again, there really is no such thing as Spanish. Spanish is basically Moorish. All of this shit is it's basically like today. Like you got a lot of people who are melanated, right? All blacks per se can be Moors, but not all Moors are black, right? In the context of the structure of what black means in legalese as opposed to law, okay? So again, we're the ones that had all of the treaties and the stuff they had to deal with because we're the ones that could trace our lineage all the way back to the seafarers, to the builders of the builders of the pyramids, to all of this shit. Because we're the ones that kept humanity and society going. So peep this. The conquest of America by the Spaniards in the 16th century. 16th century was the monumentous event which had profound consequences in world history. Portugal was the leader of the age of expulsion in the 15th and exploration 15th, but Spain became the principal contender in the contest. Spain had everything overnight because, again, the Moorish Empire fell from within. So once they did that, they basically just converted a bunch of these dirty Moors on the spot, and then they started working with them to reinstate their noble titles as noblemen. Because up until this point, no Christians that were under that fictitious jurisdiction could have any noble titles like that. Also, now these were different type of Romans in the sense that they were the ones who were now going to reconstitute the Societas Draconius, which was the bloodletting, ancient pagan blood right society of lycanthropy and vampirism that would bring back a lot of the old deceased ones that these niggas was in concert with. I'll show the evidence of that in a minute too. Boom. So from there, they recovered their land in snail-like pace. Yeah, Spain was eminent, equipped for the conquest of the new continent. She had been the crossroads of invasion since immemorial times. Remember, at this point, there's still no Spain. She was the most Roman, of all the provinces, contributing greatly to the success of the Roman Empire. On her soil developed such the most active of the Germanic kingdoms, while the civilization and other civilizations succeeded each other on the peninsula. Spain slowly developed the characteristics of her own. All of those were Romans. So when we talk about the French, the Germans, the Spanish, the Italians, they're all Romans. From there, they recovered the Christians at snail-like pace. From there, it took them 7 centuries until the Arabs abandoned the peninsula. War became the life of the peninsula, and peace was abnormal. The battle line became the Spanish frontier, an institution just as important as the United States history. Just as important as the United States history, there was an eternal war against the Moors. But those men and women who prayed to Allah left a profound imprint upon Spain, and the Spanish nation was recast in a Moorish mold, giving origin to a new character that was the amalgamation or Africa and Europe, and at the crossroads became these two continents. The same institutions, mode of behavior, and the veterans were used against the Americans. The 7th century war of reconquest was continued after 1492 in America. Instead of the Moors, the American Indians became the target. See that? Veterans and their sons were channeled to America from the Moorish War. That's it. So we just confirmed that the Moors are the Indians. We just confirmed that the Moors were the ones who put the Spanish, them niggas on their ass, that the Romans and these niggas got together. And now, again, they've made the equivocation for us that the American Indian and the so-called Moorish peoples were the ancient Mauritanians who were in an eternal war with the goddamn Romans. Yes, you're right. And in the process of that, we stay creating these new people on accident. Yes. Yes. So again, we just debunked what all of the rest of these niggas are saying. They just told you that they continued the Moorish war over here. And it makes sense because the same people they was fighting over there, came back over here because this is where they was from. And it's an eternal war, which means this shit been going on for long. We don't even know. Before these niggas was Romans, we was fighting them as whatever they was before that.
No, it's the other way. Pick the box up and put it on. Oh, sorry. I could do the rest.
So this is the issue, y'all. This is the problem. Everybody is acting like we're doing something wrong by claiming who the hell we are or were, due to the fact that we can only be who we've been. But y'all want me to be what, an African or somebody else? But no, they really want you to specifically be an African for whatever reason. Well, we know what reason, because that's who they imported to replace you. And they've made you believe that you are descended from them. However, I don't think that's the truth, because we had various histories. And if you was to look at original people from America and Africa during the 1900s, 1800s, 1700s, we have varying ways of expression. But the ones over here, we had our own way of dressing. We had our own way of talking. We have our own way of expressing ourselves culturally. So they just be bugging, you know. So the Roman Empire again was shut down in this after the time of the fall of the temple. When the temple was raised and all of the so-called people they call in the Hebrews crossed over and went all over the world, they just did their thing. And in the process of that, all of those Moors was still active in their worship and everything else. Big up to my brother Jason Forrest on Facebook. He posted this the other day so we can help, what we talk about. The Moorish Empire in Iberia, present-day Spain, Portugal, began in 711 AD when the army Tariq crossed the Straits of it was called the Straits of Hercules at the point, and conquered the Iberian Peninsula. This event marked the start of the Moorish rule, also known as Al-Andalusia, which lasted for almost 8 centuries. So we know it's actually longer than that. But, AI gonna do what AI do. But now here's the wild part. When they talk about the Iberian Peninsula, right? There's a book you should get called The End of Iberian Rule in America. Because the Iberian Peninsula, as they are talking about it, is applied to what they say Spain and Portugal was then. However, there's a part in the Moorish history of a place called Algarve, right? Or Algeciras, right? Or Algiracas, right? Which is basically the regions that were under the jurisdiction of these different types of Moorish families. And they lasted for a long time. So the Moorish Empire, let me get this, hold on. They took over Constantinople in 1453, right? So, but then they'll say that the Turkish Empire, or the so-called Ottoman Turkish Empire, ruled up until the end of the 1900s. But again, that was a different type of Turk. They weren't a part of the Ottoman, right? They were the Ottoman. But again, what the history would do, transliterate them bring them all together, and then talk about one as if it's the other. The Moorish Empire in Iberian Peninsula, Spain, fell in 1492 when the last Moorish stronghold, the Nasrid Kingdom in Granada, surrendered to the Catholic monarchs, right? Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella II of Castile, they marked the end of nearly 800-year rule, right? But again, we know it was way longer than that because we're dating the rule starting from the time that the Second Temple was destroyed. But here's the wild shit. It says what? How long was Spain under Ottoman rule? Islamic Spain from 711 to 1492. So again, if that's the case, then who were these white Turks that was running Europe, allegedly, towards the end? The decoys. The ones that had replaced. Because the real nationals were being redistributed. And they were put under heavy restriction where you couldn't really see them. Or if you did see them or you was cool with them, you had to be a part of one of these things. I'll show you. I forget the chief's name, but I did a whole thing on him one time. Chief in the front, see? See all the Moors? See the Undertaker on the right-hand side? That's the Reconstructionists. These are the niggas that was basically being used to do that, right? But then peep this. When they say that they had the Indians on the reservation, reservation also means to hold, but reserve also means to keep secret. See? And what did they call all of the so-called non-reservation Indians? Anybody remember? See that? So this is why. So when you say, oh, well, how come I didn't know about the Moorish history in my family or whatever, but I knew about the Indian side or whatever? Because of this. That's why. So like you were saying with the Holy Roman Empire. So around the 900s, right? Around the year 900 and something, there was a king and a queen that came. That was Otto and Edith. See if I get a picture of them. Yeah, that was Otto and Edith. Who became the first matriarch and patriarch of what will become the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire being consistent of all of the so-called Hansas, right? These were the great houses that were all connected by blood, but were from different regions of West Asia, aka Europa. And they weren't necessarily a state yet, but they wanted to eventually create a German state. But at this point, they're a monarchy. So as this monarchy is taking control or, is setting up or whatever, they then begin to work on or work in league with members or parts of the Moorish Empire or members of the Moorish Empire. Right? They also were part of the so-called Tartarian lineage. And they had certain type of building prowess, right? And so they found a type of building in which they would work together to create the edifices, right? And the mooring or the style that they would use would be referred to as mortar or motor. Motor or mortar is the combination of Moor and Tartary, or the Moors and the Tartarians. You see what I'm saying? And that was basically the glue that binded everything together. And so Otto and Edith and them, because they were able to maintain their titles, they said that they wasn't going to wage war against the Moorish Empire, and also even paid fealty to a degree, even though they had like certain skirmishes here and there with each other. But for the most part, the Moors let them rock, and there was heavy trade between everybody. And then they worked together to keep a lot of the Huns and them types of niggas at bay from messing everything up or coming to take more control of the territories. And that lasted for decades. I mean, for hundreds of years until the time I would think of when they reorganized themselves as Prussians. And that's when it started to go downhill. And then from Prussians, they entered into this war with what was left of the Turks in them, and it really decimated a lot of them. And so a lot of the techniques and shit they was building to do that got lost. And so they got absorbed into that. And so they decided that the only way that they were going to be able to be prosperous in the new so-called modern era was to join the Reconstructionist anti-Tartarian movement and then keep all of the real shit secret. And thus they went into another war or got some financing and tried to reconstitute themselves as the German state or the state of Germany. See? Yeah. So this is Otto and Edith right here. And these are what a lot of the Teutonic. So when they talk about the Teutonic Knights, and they talk about the Normans and these types of people, all of those were melanated people. The Normans were French. Noir in French mean black. So they can try to turn it into whatever they want, but it don't change what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah, so when they tell you that the United States government was based on the Algonquin Confederacy, they not lying. They telling you exactly what it is because they were the ones that gave them the right to vote in the Republic. And that happened through an agency that the Moors had created from ancient times called the House of Burgess. This is where we get the word burger from. They were called the Burgermeisters or the Burger Moors. The term burg is another way of saying verge or Virgo. If you get the book, The Secret History of the United States of America, or The Secret Zodiac History, I forget the name of it, The Secret Zodiac History or The Secret History of the United States, some shit. And it got the whole zodiac breakdown in the United States, and it gets into the Burgermeisters and the Burgermores and that. So the House of Burgess, without the governor and the council, Peyton Randolph Bay, who was the Speaker of the House at the time, would serve as the president of the convention. Because before you nominate, you got to have a convention, bring everybody out. The convention, the convention would elect delegates to the Continental Congress. The first Continental Congress passed their declaration and resolves, and the inter alia claimed that the American colonists were equal to all other British citizens, and protested against the taxation without the representation and stated that Britain could not tax the colonists since they were not represented in Parliament. Now, the colonists were the indentured servants. The British were the Moors. Because remember, the British King, George, was cool with, he was seen as the Sultan of Palestine and Rome. And he was in league with the Sultan of the time, who was in the what is it called? The Articles of Confederation. At the end, he is referred to as the great governor of the world because he ran the world. And that all went through the House of Burgess. So when the brutish Moors, i.e. the British subjects, who were subjects of George and the Sultan, right? So British people could be seen as Moors and vice versa. See? So You think British always mean white man. That didn't become white man until after Reconstruction. And we know this because when we look up the word Moor in the Black's Law Dictionary, it says it applies to everybody, the Celtic freeborn, Iberian Peninsula, Portuguese, whatever, Moorish, but does not mean the Caucasian or anybody from the Caucasian race, right? So this House of Burgess is that convention that he says was taking place. The governor and the council, the governor council he's talking about is the Algonquin Confederacy. That is now referred to, or that was reconstituted now as the Continental Congress. You understand? So they've been running this thing, and because we've been going from the perspective of the fool, we don't realize that this was just another part of the play from the beginning. Because the Indians that they talking about was the Asiatics. They're not talking about the Siberians. Who were the other invaders? You see? But like I said, there was a big war, and that war took many phases and many faces. You know what I mean? And one of those specifically was that of the so-called European, who himself was trying to free himself from Asia because of the jurisdiction that he was put under by all of those Moors that kept them in bondage for the most part. You know? Therefore, the idea of, like I said, the trust and these things, were all things that were created by Moors to be able to hold on to what was left and be able to pass down some sort of legacy outside of that which was constricted to them. And the ones that they created after that, you know what I mean? The identities that they walked into after that, whether it be the Huguenot or whatever, they still was at the top. Because remember, George Washington's grandfather, Nicholas Maritou, was a jet black Moor from Grenada who wound up in southern France after the expulsion. And then wound up coming to America, helped set up the Wessington plantation, along with the Baron de Cameron family, of which he was a part of the Anglo-Saxon line, you know, of melanated Moors or whatever. And they set up what would eventually become the Virginia Company after Lord Bashaw had to come over here after the beheading of Marie Antoinette and Louis. Orchestrated again by the dirty Moors. Now working with the decoy Ashkenazims, who have been given a false religion and justification to act as a decoy to throw everybody else off and continue Operation Chaos. So even before the CIA set it up, they've been had it on smash. Yes, the Algonquin was one form of the language. Then another form was what they call the Haudenosaunee, right? Another one was the Hassanamisko. You hear that? Hassan. What Indian name is Hassan, right? A Moorish one. The Hassanamisko, that actually was like a tribe, but that was actually also a dialect too. So you had the Sioux, the Algonquin, and the Haudenosaunee. And then you had the subdivisions in that. You know what I mean? But those were Moorish groups, Moorish tribes in the outset, who eventually, after the incorporation of the American colonists, allowed aspects of their culture to be franchised into subdivisions, in which now the Ananawiya become the Tasalagi, and then the Tasalagi become the Cherokee. So by the time they become the Cherokee had gone and killed all of the mound builders, i.e. Moors and stuff, and now was working with the European British, which is why they all shared the same flag. You know what I'm saying? So again, the Moors got kicked out of Spain, but the dude in the middle, he was the governor of Sicily and Italy and Venice in the 1600s. Because again, we didn't fall to no white people. That didn't come until way later. And as you can see, it probably never even happened like that either, because they've been manipulating everything since the Reconquista. So history-wise, we've been getting it from the perspective of somebody that wasn't here. A lot of your original history that you was getting about so-called yourself as a melanated person in America was coming by way of people from Africa. Think about that, bro. You were getting your history from people who were not from here. Then your own grandmother who telling you, no, you come from royalty. Everybody had a Chickasaw grandmother, Blackfoot grandpop or some shit. No, you don't believe that. So you're going to go from Rainwater or Rainfella to, Abdullah Muhammad. Like, okay, cool. There was Moors over here that was like that, but you kind of going against what you already had popping, But again, they used the Moors' nature against them. And by the time they really seen what was happening, it was too late. And so again, just like we read earlier, they had to create different names and different structures for themselves and offices for themselves to be able to preserve something. And then would just pass it on how they could. You know what I mean? But once they started putting them demons and them worms and them parasites and them white women and them niggas started having sex with them, and that succubus thing started activating in them, that was the end of them. Their ruin was imminent. You know what I'm saying? And they still falling victim to it today. So that's why you can't get too caught up in how their society is collapsing, because if it does, it's actually opening up a portal for your true society to manifest, for lack of a better word. Oh yeah. So that whole Holy Roman Empire, all of that was Moorish. As you can see, this is God. This is a coin with God on it. And you see how God looked on the coin. You understand? Yeah, so this was a medal given to the Duke of Saxony. Yeah. So we was all together, up until the point we wasn't. See? Then they let these ones out. The Hebrews started using them as labor intensive mercenaries. And then after a certain amount of years, they were adopted. They were allowed to have their religion. And then because they needed to make money and stuff and live, they had to find a way to support themselves. And they did that by pillaging. But once they got to the point where they could no longer do that, because we had shut them all the way down again, back into the caves and stuff, the ones that came out were allowed to have land here and there. And that land, they couldn't own, but they could rent it. So instead of that, they started to practice usury. And that's when everything started going downhill. So when they would show us pictures of slave ships and all of that, those slave ships that they show us these pictures of was actually old Phoenician ships as well. Here's one from a stone relief. See? So we only lost control a little while ago, if you really think about it, you know? So there's nobody older in America than the original man and woman. We've proven that over and over, but you know, this is one of the latest ones that came out. You could look this up at alphabiolabs.com. Get more on that. But yeah, Blackfeet man's DNA is the oldest in the Americas. And this ain't even about Anthony Johnson. They only traced this brother's DNA back 77,000 or 70,000 years. Brother Albert Perry and them, they shit going back, like I said, over 385,000 years. So it's a wrap for anybody else, bro. Being here before us, no. Siberians, y'all are the invaders too. And it's good that you see some of them now on TV actually starting to admit it. I think that's real dope. You know. Okay. Yeah, so you could look that up real quick. This breaks down the Algonquin thing I was showing you, the different branches. This is all in New York, all in the what they call the tri-state area. So everybody that's from there, whatever, your people's always been there. Most likely that's where they from. That's where my great great grandfather from, on my father's side. Yeah, he said I'm gonna make the white man tell the truth, and I'm gonna keep a European around long enough to show you how to run a government. And that's just what they're doing right now. Right here, you see the giants, you see the giant creeks, aka Greeks. About to get into it with the giant Spartan. See? This is all the relief found here in America. Around Burroughs Cave. So yeah, so I hope that explains why they went through what they went through, why these rappers and why these things ain't gonna change. Cause like I said, this is one big psyop. This is one big CIA clusterfuck. And now that they're about to catch, what's coming to them, we just gotta hope that they don't try to just destroy everything on their way out. You know? But like I said, you can say what you want about China and China's this and that. If you are here in America and you believe, right, that the Chinese is going to somehow make your life better by coming over here and getting rid of the devils, you might be the agent. You might be under their control. You might be one of the TikTok zombies that they talked about in their weapons protocol when they first announced that they was going to do this, create that app for y'all back in 2010. You're bugging. It's always better to deal with the devil you know than the one you don't. Anybody have any questions? Yeah. So these are all the same war. All of the wars after 1492, y'all, are the same war against the Moors. It's the eternal war that we read about in the joint. I advise all Moors, get you a copy of the surrender of Granada and add that to whatever documentation or whatever it is that you're dealing with when it comes to status and this, and that. Because every country after the surrender, after the capitulation of Granada, is a party to it. And thus, they have to maintain what is stated in the treaty in order for them to exist. And every country that has been a country has had to, at some point or the other, agree to uphold it, whether they're telling you or not. Believe that. So I'll post it real quick so you guys can see it, get a picture or whatever. And then we just start to close out. Anybody have any other questions about anything? Yes, that's true. So the MUU Armors, America. MOO Armors, Europa. MOH Armors, Germany. MOORE Moors, UK. MUIR Moors, Scotland, Ireland. Okay. MOIMAIOR Moors, Solomon Islands, all of that. MORO Moors, Philippines, and all of that. See what I'm saying? Lemuria, Mu, all the same thing. Read the book Queen Mu. And it's called Queen Mu and something, but Mu is spelled MOO. Ta-Mare, ancient Egypt. Excuse me, Ta-Seti, ancient Egypt. This is the niggas who actually build the pylons and all that stuff under the original cities and all that. That's Ta-Seti. Ta-Mare, America, ancient Egypt over here. See what I'm saying? Kemet, this is now the transition kingdom from the almost fourth dimensional aspect of shit over here, and then we starting to move it over there. Right? By the time it becomes Egypt now, that's now closer to us. So Cleopatra is actually closer to us in time than she is to the time that the pyramids themselves was actually built. So, yeah. Anybody else have any questions? So much I couldn't even get into it. It would be so much. I'd be just trying to get into it. Yeah. We'll get into it next time. Lastly, I'm going to put this up to show you what I mean about eyesight and about the perception and what we have to understand about light, right? And frequency. And the fact that we do not see, well, I'm going to show you and then you tell me what you think, what it is, okay? Somebody might have seen this before, but this is good in terms of the experiment I'm trying to show you. So in the middle, tell me what it is that you see. My bad. Can you see that now? Oh, my bad. Hold on. Okay. What do you see in the middle? In the middle image, what do you see? Somebody type it real quick. Okay, great. You see a Coke can. What color do you see the Coke can as? What color is the Coke can? Okay, it's red, right? Red and white. Okay, everybody agree? Okay. Now, this is why I'm telling you, you do not see color with your eyes. So when people say, I don't see color, they're actually right. Because you don't see color with your eyes. You see color with your brain. Because what you're seeing now has no red in it at all. This is what it looks like when I beef it up. Like when you pull it all the way up, enhance the pixels. It's actually only the colors that you see right here in the left. There's no red in the picture at all. So you know what that means, right? So that means that you didn't see the color with your eyes. Your mind saw the shape of what the image was supposed to be, and it filled in what should be there instead of what is there. That is how reality works, y'all. That is it. So on your right, they have found a way to condense light in water for you to be able to actually touch it by fusing the light itself with the fourth state of matter, which is plasma. Plasma is the aspect of melanin that is not only psychoreactive, but is constantly manifesting quantum entanglement. Therefore, plasma itself is chaos. You understand? So the chaos operations that they're doing on us is to harness the plasma that they are actually able to read and turn into functioning energy to help create plasmoid beings that they can help them incarnate into this world and into you, to also help them create plasma weapons. That's what the DEWs are, the direct energy weapons. It is light what they call transmogrified. So once you realize that you see color with your brain, this explains why they had to turn everybody into a color and why racism is so pervasive. Because it was the one thing that they could create that would allow the individual to undo themselves based on the lie that they are witnessing, which, depending on the shape, can be altered. See? So as we close out, I'll show you these. And then, if you have any other things or whatever, let me know. So everybody that they saying wasn't melanated or wasn't a part of the empire actually was. The Vikings were the Danites. You know what I mean? The Scandinavians and the niggas was all connected. It was well, and a lot of them was Muslims. This is a brooch from Ireland called the Bali cotton with Allah in the center of the cross. Okay? And on your right is a picture of a old Viking woman's ring with the name Allah engraved on it. To show you again, and this is going back to the 3rd century. Crazy, right? I thought Islam came out in the 4th, in the 7th. Wild, right? Anybody else? Yeah, but all of the stuff that you see with this China thing and all of that, I'm telling you, most of that is not only cap, but China. A lot of that is fake, yo. You think the United States fake shit? You know what I mean? China, them niggas. But again, it's the United States' fault because again, they basically subsidized China for about 20 to 30 years after Mao Zedong massacre, and then after that, they allowed them to come up in a manner that wasn't strategically better for the United States. And then by the time Reagan comes, they shut down all the American manufacturing to do all of the cheap labor in China, which then made the obsolescence act. Is that what it's called? There's an act that says that they can only create machines and things like that that don't last because all of the stuff prior to the 1900s lasts forever. So, yeah, as we close out, this is from Planet of the Apes. Beware the beast man, for he is the devil's pawn, alone among God's primates. He kills for sport in lust or greed. Yea, he will murder his brother to possess his brother's land. Let him not breed in great numbers, for he will make a desert of his home and yours. Shun him, drive him back into his jungle lair, for he is the harbinger of death. Yeah, so Planet of the Apes is a movie or a cautionary tale? Anybody else?
Please.
Anybody else? Wow. He said my grandfather's name is Cornelius. That's crazy. Yeah, that's a Moorish name. So again, please check out AseerTheDuketeers.com if you haven't already. That's my hub right now. I'm working on some things to expand it. I definitely appreciate the support if you guys can log on and check out the stuff I got going on there. It's really just a link to my other portals. They shut down my blog talk, so most of the videos and stuff that I had up there over all of the 7 years worth of stuff is gone. So I'm trying to reach out to anybody that has any old copies of them that I can turn into MP3 or whatever. I'm gonna have some that I was able to get. Peace to that brother who sent them out. They shut down the whole site. I don't know. So definitely also check out the Darsco 418, the world's most dangerous comic book novel. You can get the hard copy through www.aseertheduketeers.com on the link there. You can get the ebook. You can download it directly for your Google Play or your Kindle or whatever. Definitely check that out. And also, if you haven't already, definitely please check out CordobaOrganics.com. Queen worked real hard. And I think this will be her 16th, almost 17 years of providing traditional Moorish skincare for our people. So I definitely want to give her respect and honors for that. And everybody that's been continued supporters of the product all those years. I really appreciate it. Don't let these people divide you. You know what I mean? Don't let them get you caught up into knowledge set tripping. I just showed you who the original people are, who's running shit. It's the Moors. It's us. It's always been us. And anybody that's hating on us is usually the people that we shut down for trying to take your rights and your shit away from you. So again, man, no Moors when you see them. And just because they may not have a fez and a turban don't necessarily mean that they're not who they are, because we are who we are. You know what I mean? We are the Moors of America, bro. And it's a great thing. You know, we should be proud and we should be honored to be able to be and to know our history outside of the slave chattel shit they've been trying to get us to accept since time immemorial. You know what I mean? Because in the end, Moors, we all we got. You know what I'm saying? The Africans can go home, the Siberians can go home, everybody can go home but us. So that should tell you that if we can't be kicked out of nowhere, then we are already home. We already here. You understand? Read the Divine Creed. Forsake not your brother when you go out into the world. This is what we're supposed to be doing. These are American Moors right here. That Shango Macho right here that you see, that was the king. That was one of the kings of the great Lacono Confederacy that comprised the Arawaks and the Tainos. In the middle right there, that's actually George Washington. That's him. The white man in front of him is the fake nigga. You know what I'm saying? All of that shit about the wooden teeth and the slave teeth and all, a lot of that shit is bullshit. Remember, I told you his grandfather was a man named Nicholas Maritou. So how in one generation he go from being a jet black Moor to looking like some old white man about to die with no teeth? Get out of here, B. And then at the end is Alessandro, who was one of the great governors of Seville. Seville over there and Seville over here. You know what I mean? So again, anybody else have any questions before we close out? No, I can be long-winded. So again, man, think about that. Think about the fact that you see colors with your brain, but what allows you to rise above that is what's in your mind. And what allows you to bring it all together is what's in your heart, which is where Allah dwells. So let's keep it real, man. Let's keep it in the heart. Let's do what we gotta do as Moors, as men, as women, to raise the empire once again. All right? In our own way. Not the way that the old ones did, but the way that we supposed to. With knowledge of self. Through love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. You know? So peace to everybody. If you have any questions, hit me up at houseofbell@hotmail.com. Thank you for the donations of the $30 to DS money sign capital DS 418. And yeah, man, like I said, we all we got. So let's keep up the God work. All right. Islam. Pax et amor. Perconium alut laudibus. Nobilis gratus magnus. Ibid.